Hey, how's it going, guys? It is Foxy90 here, and welcome back to another episode of the F1 debate for you guys today here on the channel. Today, we are going to be talking about the F1 2023 Belgian Grand Prix, and finally, we are on a summer break, which is great because I have really not enjoyed the season of Formula 1. But if you're enjoying the video, though, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And let's get straight into the Belgian Grand Prix weekend, talk about the highs, talk about the lows, well, just talk about anything really, actually, just to put it straight into there. So, it was a sprint weekend at the Belgian Grand Prix, and we also had a lot of rain as well, which caused a bit of delays and a lot of talk about safety within Formula 1, and maybe I would do a separate video on that during this summer break period. I've got a couple of topics in mind that'd be cool to talk about, so maybe let me know down below in the comments what type of topics you'd like to see discussed on the F1 debate throughout the course of the summer break, and if I've got a bit of time to fill those in, then of course, I'll 100% go ahead and fill those in. So, what have obviously happened? Well, we've just had a week now since the Grand Prix itself, so it's given us a bit more time to digest how things were, and it was actually an alright race weekend in general. It was just one of those where the top four provided nothing because they basically, apart from Verstappen coming through the field in those early laps, the top four did nothing, and then the rest all just put on a great spectacle of wheel-to-wheel racing, I actually thought. Obviously, qualifying being on the Friday was quite a fascinating qualifying session. Obviously, we knew Verstappen was getting a grid penalty for a new gearbox, and I mean, it meant nothing, and it equated to nothing. But we knew he was obviously getting one, and it was just nice to see if anybody could try and maybe, get nip and tuck, but he then just went ahead and pumped in a lap worthy of the RB19's just pure raw pace and just smashed the whole field. It was quite an entertaining session up until, well, that point basically. So yeah, that was a little bit frustrating. But you've got to, like I said multiple times really, you've just got to give credit to the Red Bull for just building a brilliant car. There's nothing more that you can say about it. Like, I'm one of those people that's sick and tired of watching every single race week Red Bull winning, because for me, I'm almost titling F1 2023 as same shit, different day. It's what it feels like, but you just have to respect that they are the best, and that's what it is, and it's up to the other teams to beat them. And obviously that Red Bull is heavily tailored to suiting the driving style of Max Verstappen. I disagreed with the controversy behind, that Perez has got a different car to Max and all this stuff. Like, I don't really agree with that. Where I believe that the Red Bull is more helping Verstappen is because at the end of the day, when you've got your two drivers, you need to design and develop a car that goes in the direction of the guy that brings you the more consistency. Like, if Perez came into Red Bull and competed for the championship in 2020, basically outperformed Verstappen, then Red Bull would design and build a car that would go down the direction of Perez because he's the one to lead the team. But because nobody seems to be able to come into that team and take Verstappen's place, so to the point where Max is basically now asserted himself, like Leclerc has at Ferrari, like Norris has at McLaren, like Hamilton has at Mercedes, like Alonso in a way at Aston Martin, even though he's only been there for like a season or so. You go down that direction of who's the driver that can extract more out of a car if we build it to slightly tailored towards them, like if it has a little bit more oversteer or a bit more understeer or a bit more of the X, Y, Z. And you've got to ultimately pick a driver. You can't, it's very difficult, obviously, sometimes to have a car that suits another driver better. Like 2020 was a car that suited Charles Leclerc's driving style, but massively hurt Vettel's driving style. And it was, well, if you then try and help Vettel and peg him forwards, you peg Leclerc backwards. So what do? It's one of those at the end of the day. And because we already knew at the start of the season that Vettel was going to be leaving Ferrari in 2020, what's the point in developing a car that goes in his direction? You need to then go in the direction of your future, which is Charles Leclerc in that instance. So that's kind of where it kind of builds to and where it kind of demands to. And it's the same with Verstappen. And that's why he is ultimately, well, you saw him overtaking Perez and beating him by like 25 odd seconds in the end of it. But we shift a little bit backwards and we talk about the sprint quali format. I still don't like sprint quali. I don't think it really it's too dissimilar to normal qualifying, but in a dissimilar way that makes it worse. I don't know what you guys think about it. You may really enjoy sprint quali. I mean, overall, the session was more exciting than the real qualifying session. But my issue is having a track which was wet, not being declared wet, and then having Stroll go out on the mediums to crash was beyond stupid, but it happened anyway. I don't know why they didn't declare it as wet. They obviously just forgot or got a bit silly. But yeah, the problem with, especially doing a sprint around a track which is quite long in terms of lap time, you're only really going to get one lap to really get it right, because you've got to get your tyres right and you've got to use your tyre allocation for qualifying, the main qualifying for the main race, which, let's be real, everyone cares about. You then have a lack of tyres available for you for the sprint quali, and then by the time you go out there to do your out lap and then do your quick lap, you don't have any time to come back into the pits and then go back out again. So you have to stay on those set of tyres. And of course, in these drying conditions, fine, it works perfectly. Don't get me wrong, that's not a problem. But in these, you know, in the normal, just bog standard dry conditions, they wouldn't be able to do that. They might have maybe pushed harder on their out lap and maybe, pushed harder or even on their in lap to get in and get a new set of tyres. But again, you're running out of time, so that your only lap is your first lap, and you don't have a chance to go and do it again. And sometimes that's better, because people are saying, well, we want one-shot quali. Well, in a way, you've kind of got it, you know. But obviously, in this case, because it was wet, it, you know, allowed a little bit of a mixture on that point. And of course, we saw Verstappen again taking pole, but Piastri was so close to getting pole position. It would have been nice to have at least seen that. It was similar to like the Hungarian Grand Prix. Like, it was so nice to see somebody get pole position that wasn't a Red Bull, you know, and to see Hamilton cross the line and get pole. Everyone was so happy, and it would have been the same if Piastri got pole. Hence, it would have been the same if Norris got pole at the British Grand Prix. It would have all acquainted to the same sort of satisfaction in there. But let's face it, even in the sprint, like, Piastri was a sitting duck, because the McLarens got their downforce configurations completely wrong for the Grand Prix, and you could tell it really hurt them quite a lot, apart from a little stage in the race. But moving into the sprint, it was a weirdish sprint. Of course, we had, I think it was 5 laps was under the safety car, and that gave us an 11-lap Grand Prix to the end. And we obviously had a safety car in the middle for something. I can't actually remember what the safety car was for. Nope, genuinely can't remember what it was actually for. We had one anyway. And of course, that made Piastri's life, well, basically miserable, because the little buffer that he did have, that was gone at that point. And I think he pretty much went away from his line too early. He should have been a little bit more tactical with how he did it. But let's face it, Verstappen was going to pass him and he was going to beat him. There was no doubt about that. I mean, it was necessary that it was going to happen. But there was a lot of people, because the first stint was, well, basically just one lap on wets and everyone pitted for inters. It was nice to see things mixed up, and it showed that if you're going to do a sprintish style format, put some form of pit stops in there. Make it so you have to make a pit stop during a sprint Grand Prix, because it does bring strategy involved in it. Now, obviously, I understand that strategy would get a little bit weird when you make a pit stop, you know, in terms of the dry tyres. Like, do you have to run, you know, all types, you know, just, do you have to run multiple tyre compounds? Do you have to just run whatever you want to run? But it was clear to see that in the sprint in Austria and the sprints here in Belgium now, that chucking a pit stop in there really makes a difference. And I think it needs to be done a bit more often. And obviously we saw the likes of Perez trying to fight through the field, Hamilton coming through the field. And that's going to bring me to the discussing point of Hamilton versus Perez. And in order to do that, I'm going to actually bind together a clip of me basically analysing the overtake itself and deeming it that way. So enjoy the clip right now, where we're going to analyse the incident. Okay, so here we are at the damage analysis incident thingy, whatever you want to call it, the incident analysis page here. So we're looking here at the Hamilton-Perez incident, and obviously in this circumstance they'd given Lewis Hamilton the 5-second penalty for causing a collision, and this to me is a prime example of not letting them race and just accepting that at times you're going to get involved in wheel-to-wheel collisions in racing. So they pretty much said that, at the point of this contact between Hamilton and Perez, that, it was mostly because Sergio Perez was, forced out of the Grand Prix. This is what I don't like about the FIA, and this is where I really think that they need to have a big overhaul on just their decision-making. And even Derek Warwick came out and said that not all the stewards in the room at the time agreed with the decision that eventually got given to Hamilton to have the 5-second penalty. This is where I just think we need a little bit more clarity and a little bit more information and a bit more leniency, I think, to just wheel-to-wheel racing. And sometimes, look, carbon fibre comes off. And I mean, in this state, Hamilton was given a penalty, and it was most likely due to the fact that Sergio Perez was taken out of the Grand Prix. But it's not as if Hamilton, if Hamilton just smashes into Perez and, carries on his way scot-free, and it was a little bit more obvious, should we say, you probably have your arguments. But the thing is even in this situation, Hamilton's got floor damage after this as well. So it's not as if he's gotten away with it scot-free himself. Like, that's the reason he couldn't pass Gasly, is because he was quicker than Gasly in a straight line, but his downforce, which was already not the best anyway, just because Mercedes doesn't have the greatest grip anyway, has been compromised because he's got floor damage. So let's have a look at this then. So, I mean, at this point here, Perez has obviously gone a bit wide. We can see that, he's gone wide, and it's opened the door for Hamilton to go to it. To the point where we get to about here, just before the second Stavelot corner, and they are literally side by side. Apologies for the big fat play button in the middle, but it is what it is. To the point here where Lewis is side by side. There's no doubt here that Lewis Hamilton can go for this overtake, and he put the referring to, if you no longer go for a gap, you're no longer a racing driver. The classic quote that Ayrton Senna said, and he's completely right here. If he doesn't go for that gap right there and backs out of it, stop racing. Like, genuinely, just stop. So as he goes into the corner now, the crucial point in all of this here, as he gets his way through and towards Stavelot corner, is that it's around about here, and it is a frame back, and it's very blurry to see, but you can just see the extra spray that comes off the front right tyre. He's obviously put his wheel on the curb. Now, of course, the curb is going to have a lot more water on it. And when you've got more water on it, you instantly cool down that tyre quite dramatically. The pressure is then going to drop, and you're obviously going to understeer because you've not got the full grip that you did have. And in the notes the FIA made to actually say, why Hamilton got a penalty, they even described that he put a wheel on the curb and it caused him to understeer. Now, of course, Perez here is pretty much giving him enough space, but if Lewis went right next to Sergio Perez at this point and went a bit further right, again, you need to go as tight as you can in this instance to allow yourself a little bit of leeway, and that is basically Perez giving a Formula 1 car's width. That is a car's width space right there that Hamilton's got. Now, of course, Perez being on the outside line is going to have, a better exit, but it's at that point that he gets that. And of course, by having the lack in the tyre temperature in there, this is where Perez comes through. And you can just see here, look, that once he then starts to accelerate, you can see right there, the little jink in the steering wheel, because it's wet weather racing and you are side by side. So in this instance here, he does go into the side of Sergio Perez, and of course that's where the contact is, and you can instantly see the side pod coming through. Did I think Perez did anything wrong? Because I saw a lot of people talking about him closing the door. No, the problem is when you see an incident like this, it almost looks like you're closing the door on them because you're going into their side, but it really, really wasn't. It was nothing to do with Sergio Perez. I grant it, Perez was definitely not at fault for this, but I just think, in wheel-to-wheel wet weather racing, I think there should be more leniency on this, and I'm genuinely not a fan. This was the penalty. But that's what the stewards gave, and that's what they decided to go with. So, of course, after that, Perez had his DNF. He had his, his problems. Verstappen won, Piastri in second, Gasly a fantastic third, and Hamilton was crossed the line fourth, but got deducted back from that. And then, of course, we shift to the main Grand Prix, where the main event happened, and it instantly kicked off with some drama because of the lights out incident between Carlos Sainz and also Oscar Piastri. Now, once again, we're going to interrupt this segment of just my own face And we're going to go and analyse that incident now and showcase to you why Carlos Sainz is in the right and Piastri was in the wrong. Okay, welcome back to the damage analysis where we're here with Oscar Piastri and Carlos Sainz at the start. And this is obviously what happened at the start. So, a lot of people came out on social media because Carlos Sainz was pretty rash in his comments, basically calling out Oscar Piastri and his inexperience and blaming it all on Carlos Sainz, basically. And as I just said before I've cut to this specific point here, Carlos is right, 100%. And if you don't actually agree with my opinion and you think my analysis sucks, which it might do, because it's the first time I'm doing these type of analyses, go watch Jolyon Palmer's analysis, because it's on the F1 YouTube channel for free, where they basically freely show one segment, because the analysis is normally about half an hour long, and I love to watch them, they're great fun. But in that analysis, they freely show you guys the incident between Sainz and also Piastri, and it actually even converted me. Jolyon Palmer is one of those geezers that can do that. So, where's the issue coming into play here? We're at the start, and we've automatically got Piastri that's more than entitled to stay in the inside line where he is. As he goes towards turn 1 here, this is where we need to look at here. Sainz right now has locked up. He's, at this stage, out of control of his car. Now, as I go a little bit further backwards here, the lockup is here. Sainz right now is way out of control. He's got no control of his car because he's fully locked up. But here, he's no longer out of control of his car. He's got the braking under control. His locking is back under control. Now, right this moment here, Sainz is basically rear wheel to front wheel of Piastri, and Sainz has got full control. And Piastri at this point can clearly see that Carlos Sainz is gunning for that inside line, and he's going straight for that apex, because you can just see from his direction change in here. This right here is the point when Oscar Piastri needs to realise that and do one of two things, which is what Jolyon Palmer said. Number one, just back out of it. Let Sainz go down the inside, try and set yourself up for the exit of La Source and try and get a run on him, either on him or Lewis Hamilton, because obviously if he goes down the inside here and has free reign of the apex, that could put Hamilton under some pressure. That's his first option. Option 2, trail break it and let Sainz know that you're there by going further. He needs to be by his front wheel, realistically, to allow Sainz to fully know that he's going for a side-by-side maneuver at this point. So going into the first corner, look at this point again here now. This Sainz is so much further ahead of Oscar Piastri going into the first corner that, again, like I said, Piastri has to make that call. And he doesn't make the call. He makes the call to crash. Because going into the corner, Sainz is Sainz is in control. This is the point here where Piastri has the right to stay where he is because he's got an out of control Sainz. But this is the point here, that's stopped now. He's got everything under control. You've now got to make your call. Does he make the call? Well, obviously not. We go towards turn 1, and unfortunately Piastri's on board is quite blurry, but as you can see, he doesn't do enough here. He doesn't trail break. If he was, like I said, if he was side by side by here, he would have been warranted the space, not only by Sainz, but also by Hamilton. There would have been contact on the exit because they would have all tried to pinch each other, but this is not the way to do it. And as you can see, they go into the corner, and Sainz and Piastri make contact. Piastri's hit the wall here, and as you can see right there, try and stop the frame, right there, the suspension has automatically failed at this point, and he's gone straight into Sainz, completely ripped his floor, and also taken his side pod out. And of course, as you can see, that is them, well, both their races are ruined at that point. Obviously, we tailor through, and that's where it is. So this is on board with Sainz now, and this is what I'm talking about here. Look, as we go in towards the first corner, Sainz wants to go for the outside line here, straight away in towards turn 1. That was always his aim here, but he's covered off by Lewis Hamilton, because if they go in towards turn 1, the gap that Sainz is going for, and this is what I mean about Oscar Piastri's rookie experience. Sainz here has made his call. Outside line, I want it. But he's wary of where Lewis Hamilton is moving. Hamilton's moving to the outside because Perez has gone to the inside, and then Leclerc is now trying to recover that. So Sainz is actually managing all these three drivers. As he goes into the first corner, Perez has now shifted to the inside, to the outside. Sainz is obviously not going to be able to see Perez because he's got a Mercedes in the way. But with Hamilton now moving, Hamilton's constantly moving, and Sainz realises, I'm not going to be able to, if I go around the outside right now, which is what he's trying to do, that inside line that's, well, to his right, is now compromised. You can't do anything about it. He just has to accept, well, I either stay on the outside line and just have everyone send it up my inside and try and get the better run off the exit of Lassource, or I cover it off. So he goes to cover that off. Going in towards turn 1 now, he's smart here. He covers it off. He gets a bit of turbulent wake from the back of Lewis Hamilton's, well, from everyone really, from all 3 cars. And at this point now, he's out of control because his front tyre is locked up. But right here, his tyre, even though it's a bit smoky, because obviously he's just locked a front brake, he's now fully under control with quite a substantial distance before he gets to the corner. So by the time he gets here, this is his corner to control. If Piastri's front wing was, visible by Sainz's mirror by here, he has to warrant him the space. But again, as they go into the inside, he's not there. So because Sainz is turning in that much, it's forcing Hamilton to turn in that much. Obviously, if it was 3 wide and Sainz was further wide, Hamilton would obviously have to keep himself wider. It's just natural. And then Piastri comes through and the contact is made here in there. So overall, in my opinion, Sainz is absolutely not at fault. For me, Piastri's the one to blame. Also, guys, let me know what you think about those incident analyses in the F1 debate in these videos. Do you like them? Do you want to see them more often? Let me know, because obviously I can slow things down frame by frame using my editing software. So, it maybe helps make things look a little bit more transparent, or maybe you just continue to disagree and you want to punch me in the face, which, would be completely normal in that circumstances. So, the race was very overtake heavy, which was nice, but in the wrong areas of the track. It was all in the battle in the lower end of the points and the back end of the field, like Hamilton, Leclerc and Verstappen. Apart from Max making his way through and overtaking Leclerc and Hamilton, nothing happened between any of them. Perez, oh yeah, I forgot about Perez. He was obviously at the front. So those top 4 basically stayed top 4. And that was because obviously Piastri held everybody up going through into Eau Rouge and Raidillon. And then Sainz held everybody up because he had 5% aero damage from all of that, which he wouldn't have been too affected by the side pod damage on, the little flapping the side pod. It would have been the floor. I don't believe that I did see a picture somewhere seeing the floor damage, and that was really where he would have lost all of his aero balance. They left him out there for a bit too long. I understand why, in the fact of that there was rain coming, but when you drop down the order that fast like a stone, when you need more downforce on a car then for a wet period, you're not going to do anything. You're just going to be even slower. So it obviously didn't work for them. So bit of a shame, that one, for Carlos Sainz. But some overtaking, though, on the track, though, was really good. We saw Norris, I think, making a move around the outside of Sargent through towards No Name, which was brilliant. I think Gasly also made a move on Albon, I think it was, heading towards the Stavelot corners, but the chicane prior to that, I can't remember what the chicane is called, even if it has a name. It's not the Fania chicane. It might be. Anyway, that was a really, really fun overtaking sequence in there. And obviously you had the standard DRS blasts on the straight, but it was quite good to see that there was, I think it was like 70 plus overtakes, during the Grand Prix. It was, like I said, it was all in the wrong places, which was the real shame. We would have loved to have seen it at the front of the field, but we couldn't get it because Verstappen was too quick. Perez was at least quicker than Leclerc and Hamilton. Leclerc was a little bit quicker than Hamilton, and Hamilton was obviously quicker than Alonso, who finished in a great P5. So that pretty much rounded off the Grand Prix. Obviously, we had the rain falling, but it wasn't enough to get them on the Inters. If it did, and it was enough to switch them up and go on the Inters, I think that would have been actually quite fun, but it didn't happen, which is a real shame. But we talk about safety. We talk about it a lot in Formula 1. And today, this weekend even, last weekend actually, because I'm recording this the weekend after, I can't get my words right. We saw a lot of regards to do with safety, of course. We had the young driver, I can't remember his name, that crashed and died at the top of Raidillon earlier this year. It was in wet weather conditions, visibility was poor, crashed into the barrier and then got side hit by another car, which was the exact same way that Antoine Hubert also lost his life as well. And it comes to the question, does Spa need to be changed? No, I don't think it does. I think at the end of the day, the problem you've got is that it is to do with wet weather racing. I think what we need to look at more than anything else is the way that we go racing in wet weather conditions, because the visibility is just really, really poor. And I think in terms of safety features, we've definitely nullified a key safety feature which really could have affected the drivers, and that's the halo. We've seen countless times now how much the halo has actually saved the driver from what would have been a very, very nasty or potentially fatal injury within our sport. Where we now need to start looking at is how we go racing in wet weather conditions when the visibility, quite frankly, is extremely poor. That's pretty much where we need to really get our heads around. And obviously we saw that the rear mudguards were tested by Mercedes at Silverstone. They just didn't work and they were pretty poor, which is a real shame. But it's a starting point. You need to start somewhere with all of these development tests, and I think it's necessary that we do it. In terms of slowing Eau Rouge down, I completely disagree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, there are so many fast corners within the Formula One calendar and in racetracks that Formula One doesn't race at. You're going to get killed, probably more likely, obviously, in a high-speed accident, but that doesn't mean you can't be killed in a slow-speed accident somewhere around Monaco. What if you went through the top of, I don't know, the Lowe's hairpin, and you got stuck in there? If somebody locks up and then, goes straight into you, how's to say that you're not going to, have a serious crash in a slower corner? What Formula One, not Formula One, what racing is, you get up and you drive, and you know that when you get in that car and that visor goes down, you know that there's about obviously, fortunately for us, it's taken a little bit less time, but you know that there is a small chance that you might not actually come out of that racing car when you've gone through and sat in it. You may not come out of it. You may go out there and you are putting your life at risk when you go racing. It's as simple as that. And as Martin Brundle put it out, if you're too scared and you think there's too much doubt and fear going through your mind that you may die in a collision similar to the one that you've seen in Eau Rouge, and that puts you off of Eau Rouge, you've got to stop racing, because you're more likely to crash if you're in that situation. And this is why these drivers get paid the big bucks to entertain us, because not only do they go through all the stresses and the G-forces and just have sheer driving talent, but they also put their lives on the line every single time they go out for a session, whether that's practice, quali, or racing. And I don't think it's due to the Spa circuit being too dangerous. I think, you look at Japan. Japan's took the life of Jules Bianchi, which forced us into the virtual safety car, which forced us to start developing the halo sequence. It's just a case of, when we go racing at Spa, we have to be even more careful in the wet weather conditions. And I just think in general, wet weather racing just needs to be very strongly looked at, and make sure that drivers that go racing can actually see. Because if they can't see, we can't race. It's as simple as that, which is what we saw in 2021, which is why we were delayed in the sprint anyway, which was a smart thing to do. I think that's where we really need to look at and improve. But that's kind of my little run on the safety side of things within our sport. Looking at the teams and how they did throughout the weekend, well, Red Bull were absolutely faultless, dominated, great job for them. Ferrari, great job for them. They had a great, very solid weekend. It was a shame that Sainz wasn't involved in the main race. I think he would have benefited from being in it, but obviously he wasn't. And they obviously had, they had good straight line speed anyway, so I thought they'd be quite competitive, but they were also quite good in the corners, which definitely helped them. And it helped Leclerc take away from Lewis Hamilton. And from Mercedes' side of things, again, just naturally competitive. In terms of that battle, the second in the championship, Mercedes are always there. Now, they may not be the second fastest car within the race day, but they always keep themselves. It was Mercedes versus Aston. We've then had Mercedes versus McLaren. We've had Mercedes versus Ferrari. You can kind of see the trend. You don't seem to see a weekend, very rarely, apart from probably the Austrian Grand Prix, when it was McLaren versus Ferrari and Mercedes were nowhere. Apart from that, they're always just in and about there. And of course, they brought a big upgrade. It was very difficult, though, for them to even try and analyse that upgrade. They had no dry running, one practice session anyway, where everybody did 9 laps, and they had 2 different rear wing configurations. And of course, if you had a full dry weekend of FP1, 2 and 3, they could have easily changed that. We saw that they suffered from porpoising. Again, Mike Elliott pretty much came out and said that was very much track specific. I also kind of agree with him. I did also see a lot of other teams and drivers porpoising, not just Mercedes. Maybe theirs was a bit more violent, but again, when you don't have a setup for a car. Some teams obviously will play a bit more cautiously, knowing it's going to be heavy rain and running for practice, whatever. So they'll basically sacrifice their car a little bit. Obviously, when you got these 3 practice sessions, they could have easily gone at it in a different way and helped them on that front. Did the rear wing help? Oh, yeah, it did. They were still lacking a lot in high-speed corners. They have done anyway. That's been their biggest weakness. But it really just solidified that, especially for Hamilton's case, the fact that he was able to race with a low drag wing and also had the fastest in a straight line in the speed trap with the DRS closed definitely allowed Hamilton to put himself up there a little bit more. Russell going for the more medium downforce rear wing, it didn't really help him. It only helped him in the rain. Same with McLaren. McLaren ran a barn door, to be honest. Basically, I don't know what they were doing. They did have a low downforce spec rear wing, which they ran at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And the more frustrating thing is that they had a low downforce rear wing that they ran, or I'll not say a low downforce rear wing, but they had a trimmed rear wing that in the tyre test that they did this week, they ran it. And they didn't run it in any of the race weekend itself. Like, I don't, there's, if I can get a picture up, because I'm talking about McLaren now, I'll try and get it up. But there was a point when Piastri was coming out of the garage and was doing a nice little wheel spin, nice little cheeky little slide. But you could see that the top surface of the rear wing, you know these rear wings these days, when they come through, then they just slip down and then they go through to basically trim down the downforce, but make the DRS flap efficiency less effective because, of course, there's still less of the top plane available for them to actually run with. They ran with one of those, but they believed that their aerodynamic efficiency would be too heavily affected in the middle sector. Turns out they were wrong, and they'll look at that moving forward. So they need to look at a low spec rear wing because they don't really have one. Every one that they've ran this season has been kind of near identical with slight changes in there as well. It was a good recovery from Aston Martin. They did well, especially Fernando Alonso. Consistent pace throughout the course of the weekend. And hopefully now they say they've got a couple of upgrades in the pipeline and are slowly but surely understanding what's cost them throughout the past 3 or 4 races. So hopefully they can get back up the order. And then further down the field, Alpine played quite strongly. Tsunoda was excellent throughout the course of the weekend. Brilliant drive from him. Ricciardo was compromised via his qualifying, really. That kind of set him off on a tangent. And then, of course, looking down the order, Haas, just being Haas, really. They didn't even have a good qualifying. No good qualifying, no good racing from them, really. And that's kind of where we stood, really, for the Belgian Grand Prix. That is pretty much a nice summary, a nice overview of what I thought the Belgian Grand Prix was like. Did I think it was a great race? It was all right. The overtaking from further down the order was brilliant, but nothing else really hurt me in terms of making me excited, should I say. And now we're on the summer break, which is, do you know what? I'm fine with it. I'm fine. It's weird because when we have breaks from Formula One, most fans, it hurts them, and it hurts me as well. But on this occasion, you can have a summer break. We kind of need one a little bit to get us used to going back into the swing of a Red Bull domination. And of course, next time around when we come back from the summer break, it is Zandvoort. Obviously, Max's home track. He's the only driver to win there since we returned to Zandvoort. And yeah, you can't doubt that Red Bull would do it again. I think the pack will be closer, but Red Bull will definitely be on top. But guys, that is it for the F1 debate for the Belgian Grand Prix. If you enjoyed it, drop it a like, subscribe if you're new here as well. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care all. Peace.